What happens when a wife insists her weekend away with her boss was just networking, only to have her husband and HR present undeniable proof of her affair? Can someone talk their way out when every message, every receipt, and every lie is laid bare? How does it feel when the very act of deception becomes the evidence that ends a marriage? The morning I watched my wife pack her overnight bag for what she called a crucial networking opportunity, I had no idea I was witnessing the beginning of the end of our marriage. Laelia stood in our bedroom, carefully folding expensive lingerie into her camping gear, and I should have trusted my instincts right then. "Nathan, you're hovering again," she said without looking up, her voice carrying that familiar edge of irritation. "This is important for my career. Reese specifically invited the top performers for this leadership retreat." I leaned against the doorframe, watching her pack silk underwear for a camping trip. "Since when do you wear Victoria's Secret to sleep in a tent?" Laelia's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "God, Nathan, do you hear yourself? Just because we're camping doesn't mean I have to look like a slob. Some of us care about making good impressions." The way she said "some of us" stung. At 36, I'd grown accustomed to her subtle digs about my IT career, my preference for quiet evenings at home, my lack of what she called professional ambition. But this felt different. There was an excitement in her movements, a glow in her cheeks that I hadn't seen in years. "Why aren't spouses invited?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Usually company retreats include families for weekend events." Laelia paused, her hand stilling on a bottle of expensive perfume. "Because it's not that kind of event, Nathan. This is serious business strategy, not some family picnic. Reese is grooming a select few of us for regional positions. I can't have distractions." The word distractions hit me like a slap. After 8 years of marriage and 7-year-old Mira asking where mommy was going, I was apparently a distraction. "How many people are going?" I pressed. "I don't know, Nathan. A few of us." "Does it matter?" She zipped her bag with more force than necessary. "You know what? This is exactly why I need to do this. You question everything I do. You never support my ambitions." I watched her check her reflection in the mirror, applying lipstick for a camping trip. "Laelia, I support you. I'm just trying to understand." "Understand what? That your wife is successful? That people value my opinion and want me on important projects?" She turned to face me, her green eyes flashing. "Maybe if you showed half as much interest in advancing your own career as you do in sabotaging mine, we'd both be better off." The accusation hung in the air between us. Sabotaging her career? I worked 60-hour weeks to support our family while she climbed the corporate ladder at her marketing firm. I'd never once complained about the late nights, the weekend calls, the business dinners that stretched until midnight. "I'm not sabotaging anything," I said quietly. "I'm your husband. I worry about you." "Well, don't." She grabbed her bag and headed for the door. "Worry about yourself for once. Maybe work on that promotion you've been putting off for 3 years." I followed her downstairs, where Mira sat at the kitchen table, picking at her cereal. Our daughter looked up with those big brown eyes that mirrored my own. "Mummy, why can't Daddy come camping too?" Laelia's expression softened as she knelt beside Mira's chair. "Because this is Mommy's work trip, sweetheart. Daddy has to stay here and take care of you. But I'll bring you back something special, okay? Can I call you tonight? The cell service is pretty spotty up in the mountains, baby, but I'll try to call when I can." Laelia kissed Mira's forehead, then grabbed her keys from the counter. "I'll be back Sunday evening. There's leftover lasagna in the fridge." She paused at the door, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. For a moment, I thought she might say something more, might explain why this felt so different from her other business trips. Instead, she just shook her head. "Try not to interrogate me when I get back, okay? This is a big opportunity for us, for our family." And then she was gone, leaving behind the faint scent of her perfume and a knot of unease in my stomach that I couldn't shake. That afternoon, while Mira napped, I found myself scrolling through our joint credit card account online. It was a habit I'd developed over the years, not out of suspicion, but out of necessity. Laelia had a tendency to overspend on what she called career investments, and I liked to stay on top of our finances. The charge that caught my attention was timestamped from Friday evening, just 2 hours after she'd left, $347.82 at Pine Ridge Lodge, with a note about wine service and room accommodations. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Pine Ridge Lodge wasn't a campground. It was an upscale resort about 2 hours north of the city, the kind of place that advertised romantic getaways and luxury amenities. The kind of place that charged $300 for a bottle of wine and room service. When Mira woke up, I closed the laptop and tried to focus on being a good father. We made pancakes for dinner, watched her favorite movie, and I read her 3 bedtime stories. But that credit card charge nagged at me all evening. I tried calling Laelia around 9, but it went straight to voicemail. I told myself she was probably in meetings, or maybe the cell service really was spotty. But when I tried again at 11 and got the same result, the knot in my stomach tightened. Saturday dragged by with no word from my wife. Mira asked about Mommy twice, and I made excuses about busy schedules and poor phone reception. By Sunday afternoon, I was genuinely worried. What if something had happened? What if there had been an accident? When Laelia finally walked through the door Sunday evening, she looked radiant. Her skin had a healthy glow, her hair was perfectly styled despite supposedly spending 2 days camping, and she was wearing clothes I'd never seen before. "How was the trip?" I asked, watching her face carefully. "Amazing," she said, dropping her bag by the door. "Absolutely incredible. Reese has some fascinating ideas about market expansion, and I think I really impressed him with my strategic thinking. This could be exactly the break I've been waiting for." "Did you stay at Pine Ridge Lodge?" The question stopped her cold. For just a second I saw something flicker across her face, surprise, maybe even panic. But she recovered quickly. "Pine Ridge? No, we camped at the state park. Why would you think that?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the credit card charge. "This says otherwise." Laelia looked at the screen, then laughed. "Oh, that. We had a team dinner there Friday night. Reese wanted to discuss the weekend agenda in a more professional setting before we headed to the campground. You know how these things work, Nathan. Sometimes you have to invest money to make money." Her explanation was smooth, confident, but something about it didn't sit right with me. "A $300 dinner?" "It wasn't just dinner. There were several of us, and Reese ordered wine to celebrate the new initiative. Really good wine, apparently." She shrugged, as if $300 was nothing. "The company will reimburse it anyway." I wanted to believe her. Part of me desperately wanted to accept her explanation and move on. But as I watched her unpack her bag, I noticed things that didn't add up. Her camping gear was suspiciously clean for someone who'd spent 2 nights outdoors. Her hiking boots showed no signs of actual hiking, and when she pulled out her toiletries, I caught a whiff of expensive hotel shampoo, not the travel-size bottles she'd packed. "Who else went on this trip?" I asked. "A few people from the marketing team. I don't think you know them." She was being deliberately vague, avoiding eye contact as she sorted through her clothes. "What about photos? You usually document everything for social media." Laelia paused, a silk blouse halfway to the hamper. "I was focused on business, Nathan. Not everything is about getting likes on Instagram." That was when I knew she was lying. Laelia documented her breakfast on Instagram. The idea that she'd go on an important business trip without taking a single photo was absurd, but I didn't push it. Not yet. Instead, I filed away my suspicions and waited. Because if my wife was lying to me about a camping trip, I had a feeling the truth was going to be much worse than anything I could imagine. That night, as Laelia slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out when everything had started to go wrong. When had my wife started treating me like an obstacle to her success instead of her partner? When had our marriage become something she needed to escape from? I didn't have answers yet, but I was starting to realize I needed to find them. Monday morning brought the first crack in Laelia's carefully constructed story. I was making coffee when she came downstairs, already dressed for work in a sharp business suit that hugged her figure in all the right places. She looked confident, powerful, and completely unapproachable. "I might be late tonight," she announced, not looking up from her phone. "Reese wants to debrief about the weekend and discuss next steps for the regional expansion project." "Another dinner meeting?" I asked, trying to keep the skepticism out of my voice. "Probably. This is how business works, Nathan. You build relationships, you maintain momentum. You wouldn't understand." The casual dismissal stung, but I bit back my response. Instead, I focused on getting Mira ready for school, helping her pack her backpack, and making sure she had her lunch money. At least with my daughter, I still felt useful. After they both left, I found myself alone in the house with my thoughts and that persistent feeling that something was very wrong. I tried to focus on work, logging into my computer for another day of system maintenance and user support. But concentration was impossible. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from my younger brother, Simon. "Dude, check Instagram, your wife's post from yesterday." My stomach dropped as I opened the app and navigated to Laelia's profile. There it was, a carefully curated photo of her standing by a lake, arms spread wide, captioned, "Living my best life. Amazing weekend of professional development and strategic planning. So grateful for opportunities to grow. Blessed chakra career goals. Leadership." The photo looked professional, like something from a travel magazine. Laelia's hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and she was wearing an outfit that definitely hadn't been in her camping gear. But what really caught my attention was the background. I could see part of a building that looked distinctly like Pine Ridge Lodge, and there was what appeared to be a man's shadow at the edge of the frame. I screenshotted the image and zoomed in on the shadow. It was definitely a person, tall and broad-shouldered. Not a random hiker or fellow camper, but someone standing close enough to cast a shadow into her photo. My phone rang almost immediately. Simon's voice was tight with anger. "Nathan, please tell me you know about this." "Know about what?" "I've got a friend who works at Laelia's company. He sent me a screenshot of something that's been making the rounds in their office." My blood ran cold. "What kind of something?" "A photo. From this weekend. Laelia and her boss, Reese Callahan. They're sitting pretty close together at what looks like a restaurant. Too close for a business meeting, if you know what I mean." I closed my eyes, feeling the floor shift beneath me. "Send it to me." "Nathan, I don't think—" "Send it to me, Simon." The photo arrived 30 seconds later. It showed Laelia and a man I recognized from company holiday parties as Reese Callahan. They were seated at an intimate table for two, wine glasses in hand, and Reese's arm was clearly visible around Laelia's shoulders. Her body language was relaxed, comfortable, familiar. She was leaning into him, laughing at something he'd said. This wasn't a business dinner. This was a date. I stared at the image until my eyes burned, looking for some innocent explanation. Maybe the photographer had caught them at an awkward moment. Maybe Reese was just being friendly. Maybe I was seeing something that wasn't there, but I wasn't. Even in denial, I could recognize what I was looking at. My wife was having an affair. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. I went through the motions of my job, answered support tickets, attended a team meeting, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about the past few months, looking for signs I'd missed. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she'd started talking about Reese constantly, praising his leadership style and business acumen. How long had this been going on? How many business meetings had actually been dates? How many times had she looked me in the eye and lied? When I picked up Mira from school, I had to work hard to seem normal. She chatted about her day, her friends, an art project she was working on, and I nodded and responded appropriately while my world crumbled around me. "Is Mummy coming to my school play next week?" she asked as we drove home. "I don't know, sweetheart. She's been very busy with work lately." "She's always busy," Mira said quietly. "I miss her." I glanced in the rearview mirror at my daughter's sad face and felt a surge of anger so intense it surprised me. Laelia wasn't just betraying me. She was abandoning her daughter for an affair with her boss. That evening, I tried to act normal when Laelia came home around 9:30. She looked flushed and happy, her lipstick slightly smudged, and she claimed she'd had a productive dinner meeting with Reese and 2 other colleagues. "We're really making progress on the expansion strategy," she said, avoiding eye contact as she headed straight for the shower. "This could be huge for my career." I waited until she was in the bathroom, then checked her phone, which she'd left on the kitchen counter. It was locked, but I knew her passcode, Mira's birthday. What I found in her text messages confirmed my worst fears. The conversation with Reese was full of inside jokes, flirty comments, and references to their amazing weekend. There were heart emojis. There were messages sent at 2 in the morning. There was a text from earlier that day that made my stomach turn. "Can't stop thinking about Saturday night. You're incredible." I took screenshots of everything, my hands shaking as I scrolled through weeks of messages. They'd been planning this camping trip for over a month, and it was clear from their texts that they'd never intended to include anyone else. It had always been just the 2 of them. When Laelia came out of the shower, I was sitting on the couch pretending to watch TV. She kissed the top of my head, a gesture that now felt like a betrayal, and curled up beside me. "How was your day?" she asked, as if she actually cared. "Fine," I said. "Quiet." "Good. You need more quiet time. You've been so stressed lately." She reached for the remote. "Want to watch something together?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Her hair was still damp from the shower, and she was wearing the silk pajamas I'd bought her for Christmas. She looked beautiful, relaxed, content. She also looked like a stranger. "Laelia," I said carefully, "are you happy?" The question seemed to surprise her. "What do you mean?" "I mean with us. With our marriage. Are you happy?" She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her choosing her words carefully. "I think we've both grown in different directions over the years. That's normal in a long marriage." "That's not what I asked." She turned to face me, her green eyes unreadable. "Nathan, where is this coming from? Are you having some kind of midlife crisis?" The deflection was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost admired it. She'd turned my question about her happiness into a question about my mental state. Classic Laelia. "I saw the photo," I said quietly. "What photo?" "The one that's been circulating around your office. You and Reese at dinner." For a split second, her mask slipped. I saw panic flash across her face before she composed herself. "People love to gossip, Nathan. It's pathetic, really. Reese and I had a business dinner, and someone took a photo out of context. I can't control what small-minded people choose to see. It didn't look like a business dinner. Because you're choosing to see what you want to see." Her voice rose, and I was glad Mira was already asleep. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so insecure, so threatened by my success, that you're willing to believe office gossip over your own wife." "I'm not threatened by your success, Laelia. I'm concerned about your behavior." "My behavior?" She stood up, her face flushed with anger. "What behavior? Working hard? Building professional relationships? Trying to advance my career?" "I'm sorry if that threatens you, but I'm not going to apologize for being ambitious." "This isn't about ambition." "Isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you can't handle having a successful wife. Maybe you should focus on your own career instead of trying to sabotage mine." She stormed off to the bedroom, leaving me alone on the couch with the weight of her accusations. According to Laelia, I was insecure, threatened, and trying to sabotage her career. The fact that she was having an affair was somehow my fault for being suspicious. It was masterful gaslighting, and if I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I might have believed her. But I had seen it, and I was done being manipulated. The next morning, Laelia acted as if our confrontation had never happened. She was bright and cheerful at breakfast, chatting with Mira about her school play and making plans for the weekend, as if she hadn't spent the previous evening accusing me of sabotaging her career. "I was thinking we could have dinner at that new Italian place on Friday," she said, buttering her toast with deliberate casualness. "Make it a family night. We haven't done that in a while." I looked up from my coffee, studying her face. "Aren't you working late with Reese again?" "Not Friday. He's out of town at a conference." She smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I want to spend time with my family. Is that okay with you, or are you going to find something suspicious about that too?" Mira looked between us, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand it. "Can we get dessert?" "Of course, baby," Laelia said, ruffling our daughter's hair. "We'll get the biggest piece of tiramisu they have." I watched this performance with growing unease. This was Laelia at her most dangerous, warm, charming, and completely convincing. If I hadn't seen the evidence of her affair, I might have believed this was genuine. Instead, it felt like she was trying to re-establish control, to prove to herself, and to me, that she could still manipulate the situation. After they left for work and school, I called in sick and spent the morning researching Reese Callahan. It wasn't hard to find information about him. He was 42, divorced 2 years ago, and had a reputation in the industry as a charming but ruthless executive. His LinkedIn profile was full of posts about work-life balance and authentic leadership, which struck me as ironic given that he was sleeping with a married employee. I also found several photos from company events where Reese and Laelia appeared together. In older photos, they maintained professional distance. But in more recent images, I could see the progression of their relationship. Closer standing positions, lingering touches, shared looks that spoke of intimacy. How had I missed this? How had I been so blind? Around noon, I received a call from my mother-in-law, Martha. Laelia had clearly been busy managing the narrative. "Nathan, honey, Laelia told me you've been having some trust issues." Martha's voice was syrupy with false concern. "I want you to know that I'm here if you need to talk." I gripped the phone tighter. "Trust issues?" "She's worried about you. She says you've been accusing her of having an affair, which is just ridiculous. Laelia loves you and Mira. She would never do anything to jeopardize her family." The audacity was breathtaking. Laelia had somehow managed to frame my discovery of her affair as evidence of my mental instability. "Martha, did she tell you about the photos?" "What photos?" "Nathan, you're starting to scare me. Have you considered talking to someone? A therapist, maybe? This kind of paranoid thinking isn't healthy." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with a text from my own mother, Helen. "Martha called me. What's going on?" I drove to my parents' house and showed my mother everything. The credit card charges, the Instagram post, the office photo, the text messages. Helen examined each piece of evidence with the methodical attention of a retired accountant. "That little bitch," she said finally, which was shocking language coming from my typically reserved mother. "I never liked her, Nathan. Too ambitious, too selfish. But I never thought she'd do this to you and Mira." "What do I do, Mom?" "You document everything. You protect your daughter, and you don't let her gaslight you into thinking this is your fault." Helen's voice was steel. She made her choice. Now she has to live with the consequences. That afternoon, I received an email from an anonymous account with the subject line, "Thought you should see this." The message contained a link to a file-sharing site with dash cam footage from what appeared to be Reese's SUV. The timestamp showed Saturday night at 11:47 p.m. The video clearly showed Reese and Laelia in the front seats of his car, parked at what looked like a scenic overlook. They were kissing passionately, and Laelia's hands were in his hair. After a few minutes, the video showed them moving to the back seat. I watched 30 seconds before I had to stop. The betrayal was complete and undeniable. The anonymous email had come from someone with inside knowledge of Reese's vehicle and access to his dashcam footage. Probably someone at their company who was disgusted by their behavior and wanted me to know the truth. When Laelia came home that evening, she was carrying flowers and wearing the dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. "Surprise," she announced, setting the flowers on the kitchen table. "I got off work early so we could spend some time together. I thought maybe we could cook dinner together like we used to." I stared at the flowers, roses, my former favorite. Everything about this gesture felt calculated, designed to make me feel guilty for suspecting her. "That's nice," I said carefully. "I also thought we should talk about what happened last night. I think I overreacted, and I'm sorry. You have every right to ask questions about my work trips. I should have been more understanding." This was a masterclass in manipulation. She was apologizing without actually admitting to anything, making me feel like the unreasonable one while positioning herself as the understanding wife. "Laelia," I said, "I know about Reese." She blinked, her smile faltering for just a moment. "What do you mean?" "I know about the affair. I've seen the evidence." Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, anger, and finally, cold calculation. "What evidence? Nathan, you're really starting to worry me. This obsession with Reese isn't healthy. Maybe you should talk to someone." "I have video footage of you two together." "Video footage of what? A business meeting?" "Nathan, you're taking this too far. You're invading my privacy, stalking my colleagues, and now you're making wild accusations based on... what? Doctored videos? Office gossip?" She was good. Even faced with the truth, she was spinning the narrative, making me sound like a paranoid stalker. "I saw you kissing him. You saw what you wanted to see. Or someone showed you something taken out of context. Nathan, people are jealous of successful women. They'll do anything to tear us down, including manipulating our husbands into believing lies." "Stop," I said quietly. "Stop what? Stop defending myself against false accusations. Stop trying to save my marriage from your paranoid delusions. Stop lying to me." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her recalculating her approach. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more vulnerable. "Nathan, I love you. I love our family. I would never do anything to hurt you or Mira. But I'm not going to let you destroy my career because you're feeling insecure about our marriage." "This isn't about your career, isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you can't handle having a wife who's more successful than you are. And instead of dealing with your own feelings of inadequacy, you're trying to tear me down." The accusation hit like a physical blow. She was turning my discovery of her affair into evidence of my own failings as a husband and man. "I'm not inadequate," I said. "Then prove it. Stop this paranoid behavior and start supporting your wife's success. Stop looking for reasons to distrust me and start working on yourself." That night, as she slept peacefully beside me, I lay awake planning my next move. Laelia was never going to admit to the affair. She was too skilled at manipulation, too convinced of her own righteousness. She'd rather gaslight me into questioning my own sanity than take responsibility for her actions. But I had evidence, and I was going to use it. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected development. I was at work when Simon called, his voice tight with excitement. "Nathan, something's happening at Laelia's company. My friend Jake works in their IT department, and he says HR called an emergency meeting about inappropriate workplace relationships." I felt my pulse quicken. "What kind of meeting?" "The kind where they're reviewing company policies about fraternization between supervisors and subordinates. Apparently, someone filed a complaint." I hadn't filed any complaint, which meant someone else had noticed what was going on between Laelia and Reese. Maybe I wasn't as alone in this as I'd thought. "Jake says they're interviewing people today, starting with anyone who went on that camping trip last weekend. I thought it was just the two of them. So did everyone else. But Laelia submitted an expense report claiming it was a team-building exercise with multiple participants. Problem is, nobody else from the marketing team knows anything about it. My wife had lied to her company the same way she'd lied to me. She'd filed false expense reports to cover up her affair, which was not just adultery, but also fraud. I spent the day in a state of nervous energy, wondering what was happening at Laelia's office. She didn't call or text, which was unusual. Normally, she'd send me updates throughout the day, complaints about meetings or gossip about colleagues. The silence felt ominous. When I picked up Mira from school, she was unusually quiet. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" Emma's mum asked me if Mommy and Daddy were getting divorced, she said in a small voice. I told her no, but she said her mum heard something at the grocery store. My heart sank. If the affair was becoming local gossip, it was only a matter of time before Mira heard the details. I needed to protect my daughter from the fallout of her mother's choices. "Mommy and Daddy are having some grown-up problems right now," I said carefully. "But no matter what happens, we both love you very much, and that will never change." "Are you getting divorced?" The direct question caught me off guard. "I don't know, Mira. Maybe, but if we do, it won't be your fault, and you'll always be safe and loved." She was quiet for the rest of the drive home, and I could see her processing this information in the way that 7-year-olds do. Seriously, thoughtfully, and with more wisdom than adults often give them credit for. Laelia came home at 8:30, and I could tell immediately that her day hadn't gone well. Her usual confidence was replaced by barely controlled anxiety, and she avoided eye contact as she poured herself a large glass of wine. "How was work?" I asked. "Fine," she said curtly. "Just the usual corporate nonsense." "Anything interesting happen?" She shot me a sharp look. "Why would you ask that?" "Just making conversation." "Well, don't. I'm tired, and I don't need you analyzing every word I say." We ate dinner in tense silence, with Mira glancing nervously between us. After our daughter went to bed, Laelia poured herself another glass of wine and sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "We need to talk," she said. "Okay." "Someone at work has been spreading rumors about me and Reese, malicious, unfounded rumors that could damage both of our careers." I waited for her to continue. "HR called me in today to discuss the camping trip. Apparently, someone filed a complaint suggesting that it was inappropriate for a supervisor and subordinate to travel together without other colleagues present." "Was it inappropriate?" "Of course not. It was a legitimate business trip. But you know how these things work. Once people start talking, the truth doesn't matter. Perception becomes reality." She was still lying, still trying to control the narrative. Even faced with an HR investigation, she couldn't admit the truth. "What did you tell HR?" "The truth, that Reese is mentoring me for a potential promotion, and the camping trip was part of that professional development." I showed them my notes from our strategic planning sessions and explained how the retreat format was designed to encourage innovative thinking. "And they believed you?" "Why wouldn't they? I have documentation, Nathan. I'm a professional who takes her career seriously, unlike whoever filed this petty complaint." I could see her building up to something, and I had a feeling I wasn't going to like it. "I think it was you," she said suddenly. "I think you called my company and tried to sabotage my career because you can't handle your own insecurities." The accusation was so outrageous that I almost laughed. "I didn't call your company, Laelia." "Then who did? Who else would have reason to spread lies about me?" "Maybe someone who saw you and Reese together and was concerned about the ethics of your relationship." "There is no relationship." "God, Nathan, how many times do I have to say it? Reese is my boss. We work together. That's it." "I've seen the text messages." "What text messages?" "The ones where he tells you how incredible you are. The ones with heart emojis. The ones sent at 2 in the morning. Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. You went through my phone. You violated my privacy. You left it unlocked. That doesn't give you the right to invade my personal communications. What's next, Nathan? Are you going to start following me to work, recording my conversations? This is insane behavior. She was deflecting again, turning my discovery of evidence into an invasion of privacy. Those messages don't sound professional, Laelia. Because you're reading them with a suspicious mind. Reese is a warm, supportive manager who believes in building personal connections with his team. That's called good leadership, not an affair. What about the video? What video? The dashcam footage from his car, Saturday night, you and him in the back seat. For the first time since this whole conversation started, Laelia looked genuinely shaken. I don't know what you're talking about. Someone sent me the footage, Laelia. I saw everything. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her mind racing, trying to find an explanation that would salvage her story. Nathan, I don't know what you think you saw, but whatever it was, it's not what you're imagining. Maybe someone doctored a video to make it look like something inappropriate was happening. Maybe you misidentified the people in the footage. Maybe... Stop, I said. Just stop. Stop what? Stop lying. Stop gaslighting me. Stop treating me like I'm stupid. She stared at me with something that might have been respect, or might have been fear. I'm not lying to you, Nathan. I'm trying to save our marriage from your paranoid delusions. The next morning, I received a call from Jake, Simon's friend in IT. Nathan, I hope it's okay that Simon gave me your number. I wanted you to know what happened at work yesterday. Go ahead. HR interviewed Laelia and Reese separately about the camping trip. They also pulled expense reports, travel receipts, and email communications. The story Laelia told doesn't match the evidence. What do you mean? She claimed it was a team-building exercise with multiple participants, but she only submitted receipts for 2 people. She said they stayed at a campground, but the receipts are from Pine Ridge Lodge. She said it was approved by upper management, but there's no documentation of that approval. My wife had been caught in multiple lies by her own company's investigation. There's more, Jake continued. Someone anonymously submitted dash cam footage showing Laelia and Reese in a compromising position. HR is treating this as a serious violation of company policy. What happens now? That depends on how they want to handle it. At minimum, one of them will probably be transferred or terminated. At maximum, they could both be fired for fraud and misconduct. After I hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, thinking about what this meant for my family. Laelia's career was about to implode, and she still didn't understand that her lies were the problem, not my discovery of them. But maybe it was time she learned. Thursday evening, Laelia came home with the forced brightness of someone trying to convince herself that everything was fine. She announced that she'd made reservations at Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date for Friday night. I want to show everyone that our marriage is strong, she said, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. I've invited your parents and mine, plus Simon. It'll be good for people to see us as a united family. I watched her preparation with growing unease. This dinner wasn't about family unity, it was about public relations. Laelia wanted witnesses to our apparently happy marriage, probably to counter any rumors that might be circulating about her affair. Don't you think we should talk about what's happening at work before we involve our families? What's happening at work is exactly why we need to do this, she said, turning to face me. People are spreading vicious rumors about me, Nathan. I need my family's support right now. And if the rumors are true, they're not true. Her voice rose, then she caught herself and forced a smile. Sorry, I'm just stressed. This whole situation is so unfair. I've worked so hard to build my reputation, and now some jealous person is trying to destroy it with lies. Friday night arrived with unseasonable warmth, and Romano's was bustling with the weekend crowd. Laelia, had chosen a table in the center of the dining room, where we'd be visible to as many people as possible. She wore a red dress that hugged her curves and smiled brilliantly as our family members arrived. My mother Helen came first, her expression politely neutral as she kissed Laelia's cheek. Simon arrived a few minutes later, his jaw tight with barely controlled anger. He'd seen all the evidence I'd shown him, and he was struggling to maintain civility. Martha arrived last, sweeping in with dramatic flair and immediately embracing Laelia like she was a victim of some terrible injustice. "My poor baby," she cooed. "I can't believe what you're going through. These people are just jealous of your success." "Thank you, Mom," Laelia said, her voice trembling with what sounded like genuine emotion. "It's been so hard. Nathan's been wonderful, but I really need my family's support right now." I watched this performance with fascination. Laelia had somehow cast herself as the victim of malicious gossip rather than the perpetrator of adultery and fraud. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Laelia regaled the table with stories about her recent projects, her ideas for market expansion, and her hopes for promotion. She was charming, articulate, and completely convincing. If I hadn't seen the evidence of her affair, I might have believed her version of events. "Tell them about the camping trip," Martha urged. "Tell them how you impressed your boss with your strategic thinking." Laelia's smile faltered for just a moment. "Oh, that was just a work retreat, nothing too exciting." "Nonsense. You said Reese was amazed by your insights. You said he told you that you had real leadership potential." Simon set down his wine glass with more force than necessary. "Speaking of Reese, how is he handling the HR investigation?" The question dropped into the conversation like a bomb. Laelia's face went white, and Martha looked confused. "What HR investigation?" Martha asked. "The one into Laelia's inappropriate relationship with her boss," Simon said calmly. "Simon," I warned, but he was done being polite. "What? We're all family here, right? Shouldn't we talk about the elephant in the room?" "There is no elephant," Laelia said quickly. "Simon's referring to some malicious rumors that someone at my company has been spreading. It's all been cleared up." "Has it?" Simon pulled out his phone. "Because I have some interesting photos here that suggest otherwise." "Simon, stop," Helen said quietly, but he was already showing the screen to Martha. Martha looked at the photo of Laelia and Reese at dinner, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to something that might have been recognition. "Laelia," she said slowly, "what is this?" "It's a business dinner taken out of context. Mom, you know how office politics work. People see what they want to see." "This doesn't look like business to me." For the first time since I'd known her, Martha was questioning her daughter's story. The public setting, the undeniable evidence, and the presence of witnesses had finally penetrated her willful blindness. "Mom, please, you know me. You know I would never—" "Actually, I'm not sure I do know you anymore," Martha said quietly. Laelia looked around the table desperately, seeking an ally. Helen was stony-faced, Simon was openly hostile, and even her own mother was beginning to doubt her. Only Mira, coloring quietly in her coloring book, seemed unaware of the tension. "Nathan," Laelia said, reaching for my hand across the table, tell them this is all a misunderstanding." I looked at my wife, really looked at her. Even now, faced with overwhelming evidence and family confrontation, she was trying to manipulate the situation. She wanted me to lie for her, to help her maintain her false narrative. "I can't do that, Laelia." "What do you mean you can't do that?" "I mean I can't lie for you anymore. I can't pretend this is all a misunderstanding when I know it isn't." Her face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she might finally tell the truth. Instead, she turned to the table with tears in her eyes. "I can't believe my own family is turning against me. I'm being targeted by jealous colleagues, and instead of supporting me, you're all choosing to believe the worst." It was a masterful performance. Even knowing what I knew, I felt a flicker of sympathy for her apparent pain. Laelia, Helen said gently, we're not turning against you. We're trying to understand what's happening. What's happening is that I'm being persecuted for being a successful woman, and my own husband is so threatened by my success that he's willing to believe lies about me. They're not lies, I said quietly. Yes, they are. Nathan, how can you say that? How can you believe strangers over your own wife? Because I've seen the evidence. What evidence? Doctored photos, malicious gossip, anonymous videos that could show anyone. The evidence from your phone, the text messages between you and Reese, the ones where you plan your weekend together, the ones where he tells you how amazing Saturday night was. The restaurant seemed to go quiet around us, though I'm sure other diners were still talking. Laelia stared at me with something between shock and fury. You had no right to go through my phone. You had no right to have an affair. The words hung in the air between us, final and irrevocable. There was no taking them back, no pretending anymore. Laelia looked around the table one more time, seeking support that wasn't coming. Even Martha was staring at her with dawning understanding. Fine, she said finally, standing up and throwing her napkin on the table. If my own family wants to believe I'm some kind of monster, then I guess there's nothing more to say. Laelia, sit down, Martha said. Let's talk about this. Talk about what, Mom? About how my husband violated my privacy? About how my family is choosing to believe gossip over their own flesh and blood? There's nothing to talk about. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, leaving the rest of us sitting in stunned silence. Mira looked up from her coloring book with worried eyes. Where's Mummy going? She just needed some air, sweetheart, I said. She'll be back. But I wasn't sure that was true, and I wasn't sure I wanted it to be. We finished dinner in subdued conversation, with Martha asking quiet questions about the evidence, and Helen offering to take Mira for the weekend. Simon apologized for forcing the confrontation, but I told him it was time for the truth to come out. When we got home, Laelia's car was in the driveway, but she'd locked herself in our bedroom. I could hear her on the phone, her voice rising and falling in what sounded like an argument. I put Mira to bed and sat in the living room, waiting. Around midnight, Laelia finally came downstairs. Her eyes were red from crying, but her expression was cold and determined. I've been thinking about what you said tonight, she began. Okay. And I've realized that our marriage is over, not because of anything I've done, but because you've chosen to believe lies about me. You've chosen to humiliate me in front of our families, rather than support me through a difficult time. I stared at her, amazed by her ability to rewrite history, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. Laelia, you had an affair. I had a professional relationship that you've twisted into something ugly because of your own insecurities. I have video footage of you kissing him. You have footage that you've misinterpreted because you wanted to see something that wasn't there. We were going in circles, and I was tired of the game. What do you want, Laelia? I want you to admit that you've made a mistake. I want you to apologize to our families for embarrassing me tonight, and I want you to get counseling for your paranoid behavior. And if I don't, then I'll file for divorce and I'll make sure everyone knows it's because you're an abusive husband who invaded my privacy and made false accusations against me. The threat was delivered calmly, matter-of-factly, as if she was discussing the weather. She was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to make herself the victim. Actually, Laelia, you won't be filing for divorce. What do you mean? I reached into the end table drawer and pulled out a manila folder I'd prepared earlier that day. I mean, you'll be served with papers on Monday morning, along with a custody petition that documents your affair and requests primary custody of Mira. Her face went white. You can't do that. I can, and I have. I've also forwarded all the evidence to my lawyer, including the text messages, the photos, the credit card statements, and the dashcam footage. Nathan, you don't understand. If you do this, it won't just hurt me. It'll hurt Mira too. Do you really want to put our daughter through a nasty divorce? I want to protect our daughter from a mother who lies, cheats, and commits fraud. Fraud? Nathan, you're being ridiculous. You filed false expense reports with your company. You claimed the camping trip was a team-building exercise when it was actually a romantic getaway. That's fraud, Laelia, and it's going to cost you your job. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, Laelia looked genuinely frightened. The reality of her situation was finally sinking in. Nathan, please, let's talk about this rationally. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can... No, I said quietly. We can't, because you're still lying. Even now, faced with all the evidence, you're still trying to gaslight me into believing this is my fault. It is your fault. If you'd been a better husband, if you'd paid more attention to me, if you'd supported my career, instead of feeling threatened by it, none of this would have happened. And there it was, the truth finally. In Laelia's mind, her affair was my fault for being inadequate. Her lies were justified by my supposed failures as a husband. Get out, I said. What? Get out of my house tonight. You can stay at your mother's, or with Reese, or wherever you want, but you're not sleeping here anymore. This is my house too. Not anymore. My lawyer has already filed for a restraining order based on your emotional abuse and manipulation. You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating her options. Finally, she seemed to realize that her manipulations had run their course. Fine, she said. But this isn't over, Nathan. I'll fight you for custody, and I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. Good luck with that, I said, because everyone already knows what kind of woman you really are. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that follows a storm. I'd spent the weekend with Mira, explaining in age-appropriate terms that Mommy and Daddy were having problems, and that she'd be staying with me for a while. My daughter took the news with the resilience that children often show, asking practical questions about her school routine and whether she could still have sleepovers with her friends. At 9 a.m. sharp, my lawyer, David Chen, called to confirm that the divorce papers had been served to Laelia at her mother's house. At 9:15, my phone started buzzing with angry texts from Martha, calling me vindictive and cruel. At 9:30, Laelia herself called, her voice shaking with rage and what might have been panic. Nathan, what have you done? I've filed for divorce and primary custody of Mira, just like I told you I would. You can't do this. You can't destroy our family because of your paranoid delusions. I'm not destroying our family, Laelia. You did that when you decided to have an affair with your boss. For the last time, there is no affair. This is all in your head. I was amazed by her persistence. Even faced with divorce papers and a custody battle, she was still maintaining her innocence. How did the meeting with HR go this morning? I asked. The silence on the other end of the line told me everything I needed to know. How did you... She started, then caught herself. Simon's friend Jake kept me informed. Apparently, HR's investigation found some interesting discrepancies in your expense reports. Nathan, please, let's meet for lunch. Let's talk about this like adults. I can explain everything. There's nothing to explain, and there's nothing to talk about. What about Mira? What about our daughter? What about her? She'll be better off with a father who tells the truth than a mother who lies about everything. I'm her mother. You can't keep her from me. I'm not keeping her from you. You're welcome to have supervised visitation once the court determines what's in her best interests. The phone went quiet for a long moment, and when Laelia spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, more desperate. Nathan, I'm begging you. Don't do this. I'll do anything. I'll quit my job. I'll never see Reese again. I'll go to counseling. Just please don't take Mira away from me. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy. This was the woman I'd married, the mother of my child, and she sounded genuinely broken. But then I remembered the months of lies, the gaslighting, the way she'd tried to make me question my own sanity rather than admit the truth. You should have thought about that before you had the affair, I said, and hung up. Tuesday brought news from Jake that HR had completed their investigation. Both Laelia and Reese had been terminated for violation of company policy, falsification of expense reports, and conduct detrimental to the organization. The company was also considering whether to pursue criminal charges for fraud. Wednesday, I received a call from David with an update on the custody proceedings. Nathan, I have to ask you this directly. Are you absolutely certain about the evidence? Because Laelia's lawyer is claiming that you've fabricated everything out of jealousy and spite. I'm certain. Good, because they're demanding a full forensic analysis of the text messages, photos, and video footage. They seem to think they can prove the evidence is fake. Let them try. Thursday afternoon, Mira came home from school with tears in her eyes. Daddy, Emma's mum says Mommy got fired for being bad. Is that true? I knelt down to my daughter's eye level, choosing my words carefully. Mommy made some mistakes at work, and her company decided she couldn't work there anymore. Is she in trouble? Yes, sweetheart, she's in trouble. Are you mad at her? I thought about that question. Was I mad? Yes, but it was more than that. I was disappointed, hurt, and profoundly sad for what we'd lost. I'm sad that Mommy made choices that hurt our family, I said finally. But I'm not mad at you, and this isn't your fault. Will Mommy come home? No, baby. Mommy and Daddy are getting divorced, which means we won't live together anymore. But we both love you very much, and that will never change. Friday brought the call I'd been waiting for. David's voice was triumphant. Nathan, the forensic analysis is complete. Not only is all your evidence authentic, but they found additional material on Laelia's devices that she thought she'd deleted. Text messages going back 6 months, photos from other trips, even hotel receipts that she paid for with cash. How much additional material? Enough to prove that this affair has been going on for half a year, enough to show premeditation and deception on a massive scale, and enough to demonstrate that she's been lying to everyone. You, her family, her company, and even her own lawyer. What does this mean for custody? It means you're going to get everything you asked for. Primary custody, child support, and probably a significant portion of the marital assets. Laelia's credibility is completely destroyed. That evening, as I was making dinner for Mira and myself, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Laelia standing on my porch, looking haggard and defeated. She'd lost weight. Her usually perfect hair was unkempt, and her clothes looked like she'd slept in them. Nathan, please, I need to talk to you. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. The forensic analysis. They found things I thought I'd deleted. I know. So you know that I've been lying about everything for months. It was the first time she'd admitted the truth, and I found I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no vindication, just emptiness. Yes, I know. I'm sorry. The words came out as a whisper. I'm so sorry, Nathan. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know how I became this person. You became this person by making choices, Laelia. Every day for 6 months, you chose to lie to me, to cheat on me, to steal from your company, and to gaslight me when I started asking questions. I know, and I hate myself for it, but please, can't we try to work this out, for Mira's sake? For Mira's sake, I'm making sure she grows up with at least one parent who tells the truth. Nathan, I'll do anything. I'll sign a post-nuptial agreement giving you everything. I'll go to therapy. I'll never see Reese again. I'll be the wife you deserve. You had the chance to be the wife I deserved. You chose to be someone else instead. She started crying then, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay, but I'd learned not to trust my sympathetic impulses where Laelia was concerned. What about Mira? She asked through her tears. Please don't keep her from me. I know I've been a terrible wife, but I love my daughter. You'll have supervised visitation every other weekend, assuming you can pass a psychological evaluation. That's what the court decided. Supervised visitation? Nathan, she's my baby. She's the daughter of a woman who committed fraud, had a 6-month affair, and spent months gaslighting her husband. The court takes that seriously. But I would never hurt her. You already have hurt her. Every lie you told, every night you came home late from your business meetings, every time you chose Reese over your family, you were hurting her. Laelia stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her finally understanding the full scope of what she'd lost. I never meant for any of this to happen, she said quietly. Yes, you did. You meant for all of it to happen. You just didn't mean to get caught. She turned to leave, then looked back one more time. For what it's worth, Nathan, you were a good husband, better than I deserved. Yes, I said, I was. 3 months later, I sat in David's office as he handed me the final divorce decree. Laelia had signed everything without contest, probably because her lawyer had explained that fighting would only make things worse for her. I got primary custody of Mira, the house, and most of our assets. Laelia got supervised visitation and a court order to pay child support, assuming she could find another job. Her reputation in the marketing industry was destroyed, and several companies had blacklisted her after word of the fraud spread. Reese had landed on his feet, as men like him usually do. He'd found a position at another company and was probably charming his way through a new set of subordinates. As for me, I was learning to be a single father. Mira was adjusting well to our new routine, and she seemed happier without the constant tension that had filled our house during the final months of my marriage. Any regrets? David asked as I signed the final paperwork. I thought about it. Did I regret the end of my marriage? The disruption to Mira's life? The months of pain and uncertainty? No, I said finally. No regrets. Because the truth was, I was free. Free from the lies, free from the gaslighting, free from the constant feeling that I was losing my mind. I'd chosen to face reality instead of living in denial, and that choice had saved both me and my daughter. That evening, as Mira and I made dinner together, she asked the question I'd been expecting. Daddy, are you happy that Mommy doesn't live here anymore? It was a complicated question that deserved an honest answer. I'm sad that Mommy made choices that hurt our family, I said, but I'm happy that we don't have to live with lies anymore. And I'm very happy that I get to spend every day with you. Me too, she said, and went back to stirring the pasta sauce. Later that night, after Mira was asleep, I sat on my porch with a beer and thought about the past year. I'd lost a wife, but I'd gained something more valuable. The knowledge that I could trust my own perceptions, that I didn't have to accept lies just to keep the peace, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Nathan, this is Reese. I wanted you to know that I never meant for things to go as far as they did with Laelia. She told me your marriage was already over. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. I didn't need Reese's explanations or apologies. I didn't need to understand his motivations or hear his justifications. I had everything I needed, my daughter, my integrity, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that when someone tried to gaslight me into questioning my own sanity, I'd trusted the evidence instead of the lies, and that had made all the difference.